like to welcome everyone to another U.S. Rowing webinar. My name is Richard Butler. I am co-chair for the U.S. Rowing Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee. It's an amazing committee of 17 very diverse individuals who have passion for the sport, just as the catch crew. Everything that I talk about today and everything that our panelists talk about today it's not from U.S. Rowing. It's not U.S. Rowing's views. It's our own personal views, our own personal thoughts. And so that's important to know. And so we're going to jump in. Welcome. I'm gonna give a shout out to anyone that's on here from Three Rivers Rowing. I saw Matt Logue in the chat, said hello to the crew. And you can put things in the chat. We'll have a question and answer period in about 25 minutes. If you have a question, put it in the chat and either Sam can help me call them out later, or if we don't get to them, we will be more than glad to respond to the question at another time. Welcome, Alexandra Sanders, former member of TRRA, now in Atlanta. All right, so we're going to jump right in. You don't need to know any more about me. And instead of me going over each of the panelists' bio, they're going to have anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes to introduce themselves, maybe share what you do as a professional if you want to, but more importantly, what attracted you and why did you say yes to rowing? And so I'm going to start with the man that really started it all. So Rob Chambers, you're on the spot.
He's on mute.
You're on mute too, which is, we rather hear you. Yeah.
You guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Rich, and thanks everyone. I'm really excited about what's going on right now in terms of our story being told.
We're losing you, Rob. We lost you, Rob. We're going to come back to you. You're frozen, and you're handsome. So we're gonna come back to you, Rob. So let's take it to either Debbie or Terry.
Okay. All right. So my name is Deborah Benu. I rowed, I think it was probably about a whole equivalent 3 years. I was brought on by Kevin Huff. We were co-worker. He was my first line supervisor. I was the first female to infiltrate the men's team. Kevin brought me on because he thought, as the lone woman at first, I could handle the pressure. It was not a problem. It was great. It was wonderful. I've always been active. I was always drawn to the water, but I never had any opportunities other than the anything to float race at the regattas. It was the only thing that I really ever got into as far as rowing on the waters, but you know that doesn't count. But I had a marvelous time the whole time. I was a Port Authority bus driver, so it kept between that and it kept me busy. And like I said, Kevin brought me on. I enjoyed every minute of it. There were some hard times, there were some lovely times, but we all stuck together as a cohesive unit. And I really loved it. It's not much more I can say short of the questions, but I'm there. I hope we get to do a reunion and do something to go with this. It's a missed opportunity, definitely, and we should be heard.
Yeah, thank you for that, Debbie. And I need to remind everyone that the catch crew rowed out of Three Rivers Rowing Association, where I became the second ever executive director for the organization. And I can't take claim to fame to the catch crew because they were there when I showed up. But I will tell you that I thought rowing was badass when I saw all these Black people rowing. I didn't know that this was not the norm across the country. So that's pretty exciting. So Terry, we're going to go with you.
Thank you. First of all, I appreciate you assembling us and giving us this opportunity to tell our story and actually even have this little Zoom reunion of sorts. So I'm very excited to be here and grateful. I deferred to Debbie when you gave us both the opportunity because Debbie was the first. Debbie was there. Debbie laid the groundwork for the women who followed, and there were a few women. I was actually the third woman who joined, and it was through my meeting Linda, the second woman who joined the team. Uh, her invitation, her excitement, her enthusiasm in her voice. It's like, oh my gosh, you got to just come and check it out. You got to come and check it out. And being a person who was born and raised in Pittsburgh, I had lived a number of places, but you go over these bridges, you're see this water all the time. I didn't have a connection to the water. I didn't own a boat. I didn't do water sports. But it gave me, she just made it sound so exciting. And so I went down and I was hooked from day one. I met Rob, I met Kevin, I met Debbie, I met a few others, and their passion, their energy, the way that they talked about the sport, and I was drawn to it. And actually I came into it seeing other people that look like me. And that made me immediately feel some sense of welcome. Like Debbie said, there were good times, there were challenging times. It was not all a bed of roses, but I would have to say that my experience with rowing was overall positive because of these great people right here. So anyway, that's
Yeah,
me.
yeah, thank you for that, Terry. And we're not going to sugarcoat some of the conversation and just be honest about our experiences and how rowing clubs can possibly in the future not end up in the pitfalls that happened at Three Rivers. And so this is a good model for others to be listening when you're trying to be inclusive. Uh, you have to be prepared to be inclusive. It's one thing to say that you want to be diverse, and that's what Three Rivers Rowing did. They checked that box and it was beautiful, but inclusiveness and feeling welcome and and equitable resources, that becomes a whole another conversation, or we might weave that into this. So thank you for that. And Terry, I want to let you know, I think this is actually your second mini reunion in 2 months with this group, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Right.
So
So,
the next one's got to be in person.
all right, so this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do this time, Terry. We're going to popcorn it. So you can either ask Rob, Paul, or Kevin.
I'm going to give Rob his shot again as our fearless leader.
All right, can you guys hear me this time?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
sir.
All right, great. Thank you, Terry. Yeah, so as I was saying, Mike Lambert and a panel of folks reached out to me and talked to me about getting involved in something that had never been done before. Pastor Tim Smith was on that panel. There were quite a few people that were on that panel. He comes to mind, and there's also an executive director. I can't think of her name right now. She recently passed away. She was the executive director, Miss Charlotte Watson, I believe was her name, at Neighborhood Centers Association. She was familiar with my background working with youth, working with sports. I was an athlete coming up. I played football, I played some other sports, and I also coached 13 years, 10 years little league football, 3 years high school for Penn Hills High School. And then I ended up swim. I didn't even know how to swim at first. I had to take swim lessons. That was challenging, learning how to swim as an adult. Being able to pass that test. I'm still not a fish, but I was able to pass the test. So that was a challenge. Then I had to learn how to row. That was a challenge. And then, quite frankly, learn how to fit in culturally. Being the only raisin in the milk, quite frankly, is always a daunting task, especially when it's something that you've never done. But I had people like Coach Donald Weber Plank, Mike Lambert, Steve Irwin, There were champions that were behind me, as Cynthia Vanda, just to name a few. And you know, anyone I missed, please forgive me. But those are some people that come to mind that were there on the day-to-day grind of trying to get something done that had never been done, trying to get people excited about something that they weren't even familiar with, and you know, even dealing with it within my home. I'll never forget my wife at the time. She was a hairstylist, and I had just got done rowing, and you know, we wear our little rowing tights and our attire, and I come into a black hair salon, and she basically told me don't ever come in there like that again. She was embarrassed by my attire, and didn't like how I looked. So there's a lot of stigmas that came with rowing. I mean, I was essentially, you know, leaving one dynamic, you know, with an elite upper class Ivy League group, and then I was still involved in the Homewood community. So I was leaving that dynamic and going right to a completely different dynamic, trying to recruit minority African American females. I also want to give credit to the principal at Westinghouse High School. We ended up naming a boat after her, Dr. Marlon Barnett. She was one of my early supporters who allowed me to come into that high school back in the early 2000s, 99, somewhere around there, when we were able to get Crystal Adams involved in rowing, and we were looking for a champion. We needed a story. We needed something to get people excited about it. And Mike Lambert was very strategic and about his vision. And he really is the guy who helped me to buy in because I felt he was genuine. You know, I never forget him saying to me, Rob, these rivers are for everyone. Everyone should enjoy these rivers. These are public rivers. And I just think in the Black community, we don't look at it like that. I know a lot of guys who fish and are into fishing, but, you know, to look at the rivers in a completely different way in terms of getting out on a boat and using it for exercise, I think was something that was different in our community. So, I mean, I can go on and on and on. I don't know how much time I got. I don't want to monopolize the time.
You're done.
Okay.
we're going to fill in those gaps later on in the conversation. And so, Rob, and so as Rob's talking, because most of the watchers and listeners don't have the backstory, we're from Pittsburgh, and Mike Lambert was the founder and original executive director of Three Rivers Rowing. And he was a visionary to the point where he helped convince the board to actually hire me to be the first African-American executive director in the country. And then he went on to be very intentional and hired Rob. And so as you're listening to this, you know, representation is everything. He hired Rob, who was not a rower, and they created a rower out of Rob, and then he became one of the coaches. And that was hugely important for people to come on board. And so you don't have to have a rowing background, but you all are experts, content experts in rowing, and you can teach people that don't look like you to become coaches before you actually start the program, because our representation means everything. And throughout this conversation, I'm going to say the word intentionality, and I'm going to say the word invite, because that's how come this program was successful. So Rob, you can popcorn to either Kevin or Paul.
Great. I'm going to pass it to Kevin, who was our fearless captain. I'm sure he's got some nuggets to share.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much, Rob. First of all, I'm just honored to be here with everyone today. And I'm just so pleased that this has happened. And I'm glad that we as a team just haven't been forgotten. When I was invited to come down to the team, Rob was having a problem with recruitment. He had a difficult time of maintaining or retaining athletes to be a part of the program. A couple members knew me and knew that I already owned a boat. I had a little 15.5-foot raggedy runabout that I went up and down the river fishing. My daughter was on, and half of the time her at probably 7, 8 years old, she was the one that was driving. All right. So we were familiar with the water. I'm a guy, I'm a bigger guy, but I'm always doing things that are kind of atypical. I swim, I run, and I cycle. So when somebody gave me the opportunity to come down and join a team of African Americans and to row on the river, I jumped at the opportunity. I jumped at that opportunity. And so when I got there, I mean, we all know Rob Chambers, and any of you that have had a chance just to listen to him for the first couple of minutes, he's infectious and you buy into his program. I loved everything he said, and I wanted to be able to compete. A point, we had an opportunity, we could have been recreation, but Rob gave us a choice. He said, now, do you want to do this recreationally or do you want to do it competitively? And we knew once we became competitive, we were opening a door that wasn't necessarily going to be an easy one. And I'm not talking about just from the standpoint of the work we needed to put in as a team, but just the idea of being accepted, respected, and just trying to earn that. That was not going to come easy, and we knew that going in. But we did. We chose to be competitive. So, you know, all I can say is I loved it. I loved it so much. I brought my daughter in to be part of the program, and she became a coxswain, and I would say a very good one at that. She coxed us on numerous races, as well as other teams, corporate teams, etc. So, you know, I really love the team. I love the team members, and I'm extremely proud of what it is that we were able to accomplish in those years.
Thank you, Kevin. I was going to ask you about your daughter because I was always so proud to see her being hired to cox the other boats, especially during corporate rowing, earn some money, steer some boats, and, everyone's learning. And so to put a young Black woman in a boat of all white rowers, they get to learn also. And that's what inclusiveness is all about.
I agree. And a sport like rowing is extremely demanding. And sitting in that coxswain role, the rowers are pulling oars and they have to work hard. But as a coxswain, you got a tremendous amount of responsibility. Just coxing the boat out of the boathouse and onto the water, you have to be, knowledgeable about what it is that you're doing. And so, I too was very proud of her, and she took that knowledge and skill of working with working with people, and she's gone on to do very well educationally, academically, and whatnot. So I'm very proud of her, and I think rowing had a lot to do with that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Kevin. And so you want to just toss that right over to our man, Paul?
Yes, indeed. Paul?
Hey, thanks, Kevin. Yeah, first of all, I just want to give a shout out to US Rowing for putting on this webinar. It's very much appreciated. It's an honor to be a part of an opportunity to tell this story. I also want to give a shout out to the Cross Currents Minority Rowing Team out of University of Rochester, and to Arshay Cooper for his award-winning documentary, A Most Beautiful Thing. Both of them are rowing clubs, rowing endeavors, rowing initiatives that were that made their own mark, and and in many respects, we're telling our story, even though we're at the beginning stages, just like they are. So I'm proud to be here. I'm an attorney out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I first learned about rowing because I ran into a friend of mine, Latanya Harris. And actually, Richard, if you don't mind, I just want to give a shout out to a couple.
Yeah, I was going to. Some of them have already put in the chat how honored they were. So go ahead and give the whole team a shout out.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot. Listen, it was a large team, and like you, Richard, I wasn't the first, one of the first ones. I came a year after they were up and running. But when I got there, I met, just want to give a shout out to my buddy Joe McCain, Joe McCain and Ray Zellers, my homies, Kim Randolph, Leah Wassler, Latanya Harris, Tori Wassler, Linda Avery, Linwood Harris. These are people that were there when I got there. And in addition to my co-panelists, so very, very inspiring. I mentioned Latanya. I happened to just run into her on the street, and we were just catching up. How you doing? How you been? And she told me about the team and about Rob. And she was like, "I'm serious. You got to check it out. It's everybody. They're serious. Everybody." So I just, she hyped it up so much that I went down there to check it out. And she told me what day to come down. I came down there. I met Rob. And as Kevin said, the infectious nature of Rob's energy, and T was right. I got down there, everybody was consistent. They're showing up. They were, it was large. I mean, there was at least somewhere between 18 to 24 other rowers, co-ed, just a large group of professional adults that were seriously coming down there and consistently rowing. And I was just blown away. I was intrigued. It was an opportunity to learn a new sport, make some new friends, be a part of history, even learn something about the landscape in our own city, not to mention, the positive health aspects of it. So there was no downside. We were there minimum practice 3 times a week, minimum. And everybody was showing up consistently. And then, so, and Kevin, I just want to, I want to thank him because when after a while, Rob Chambers had to leave. He had to go on to another endeavor after we were there for a couple of years, and then Kevin, stepped in. So we were able to keep it going because Kevin and his daughter, stepped in to fill the void that Rob left. So we were able to keep it going. And we were traveling. I mean, we were competing. I personally, competed in Philadelphia, Columbus, this is an award-winning team. So I'm just very grateful. I want to co-sign on the raggediness of Kevin Huff's boat. He did not exaggerate when he talked about the run. he didn't exaggerate by any means. But yeah, so it was just inspiring, and I'm glad to be a part of the story, and very much looking forward to working with U.S. Rowing and Three Rivers Rowing Association to advance the Catch Cruise legacy, and get this story out and inspire and encourage other rowers and coaches, particularly ones of color that perceive the sport to be inaccessible.
Paul, thank you for that. And thank you and Joe Cheese for really getting behind this and resuscitating who you are. And I know that Three Rivers Rowing is now in action to do better than ever before. And with your help, with the Catch Crew's help, we know that this is going to be one of the most inclusive programs in the country. I will add that Paul's passion for the sport did not stop when he stopped rowing. He actually nominated himself to be on the U.S. Rowing Board, and that's pretty powerful. And also, and he did not get in this time, but they know he's here, and he's lurking in the background, and so we'll see what we can do. And Terry Bell was one of the not first, but in the club of one or two first African Americans on the board of Three Rivers Rowing. And when she got on the board, I don't remember if I asked you to be on the board, Terry, because I felt like I needed representation on the board, or that we all talked about you being on the board. But I really felt like I had an ally once you got on that board. And so I really appreciate the time that you put in. And so there's a lot of questions going into the chat room, and you're going to have a lot of time to do live question and answer, if that's correct, Sam. If that's not correct, Sam, if they can't be live, then they can do their questions in the chat room, and then we'll call them out. But I think the first burning question is, are any of you still rowing And if you're not, why not? Besides getting old.
Yeah, you know what, Richard? It's a very alluring sport. And I know, and I just, just speaking for myself, I know sometimes life gets in the way. As I mentioned earlier, everybody on the team they're adult professionals. So there were some things that transpired in terms of, people's, career opportunities and things like that. Everybody knows that rowing is a very consistent sport, and so you have to have the time to set aside to be consistent when it comes to practice, because one person can throw off an entire boat, particularly with a 4-person, 8-person. So that happened. Having said that, I do think that question has some parallels to the original question in the chat, which was what could Three Rivers, and I'm not going to point fingers at at Three Rivers, but we're trying to learn and grow from the experience from all angles, and I think that, with the benefit of hindsight, I think that there are some things that can be put in place or could have been put in place from Three Rivers Rowing perspective, that would have created a stronger incentive, a more inclusive environment, something that would have compelled us to remain even more cohesive.
So Paul, I'm gonna stop you there and want you to
Okay.
be a little more specific. Like, give me one example of what they could have done.
Well, I think just from a very, very basic level, I just think, the communication, the interest. We had, we had the benefit of having several quality coaches, right? Rob Chambers, Kevin Huff, Carol, Donald Weber playing. I mean, we had some excellent coaches. But when people started falling off, and there was a little bit of disjointedness that was that created. I think that it would have been. I think if Three Rivers had approached, individual members or even collectively as a team, and said, "Hey, look, this is a significant endeavor. You guys have been here. You've won medals. You're an award-winning team. This is a positive reflection on Pittsburgh and Three Rivers. What can we do to support you guys? Assist." It might have been just some assisting with better equipment. It could have been assistance with more integration in terms of activities within Three Rivers Rowing Association. There's a lot of activities that go on there. It's not just rowing. Representation, committees, volunteer opportunities, things that collectively and combined create a supportive and inclusive environment in which ordinarily would compel a person to stay and say, well, this is, we want you here and we want to grow with you. So those are just a few examples that I think would have assisted. I mean, I'm just speaking for myself. I don't recall anybody approaching us and saying, hey, don't go, so to speak.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Paul. Does anyone else want to piggyback on that? Terry, you were taking your breath, so I think you're
Yes, I will piggyback on that. What Paul said is exactly right. It's interesting how, we were coming down 3 days a week. Rowing was important to me enough that the days that I wasn't rowing, I was trying to work out. I was trying to stay in shape. Richard, I went through some of your torturous workouts before, but it's interesting how quickly life changes and that time gets sucked up and gets dedicated to something else. I think that our most successful rower was Joe McCain, who continued on beyond all of us. But once our team started to, people started to fall off, we had a connection to each other and we had a connection to our team. We didn't have the same connection to the organization. And so once the team was no longer, then we didn't have that sense of connectedness and inclusion and belonging and welcomeness within the organization. I'm not going to paint a picture that everyone was horrible, or the whole experience, or I never had moments where I felt welcome. There were individuals who always made me feel welcome, but I would say by and large, we did not feel that connection. We were never integrated into the organization the way that other teams were.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Terry. I always felt that the program was a standalone program and it was separate but equal on the docks, and not always as equal as I use that term. Someone in the chat room said that you share boats with Three Rivers Rowing. Yes, they were full members, so whatever boats they were qualified to use, they would use those boats. Anyone else want to?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in on that, Rich. I think, just to piggyback off of what Terry and Paul said, I think Three Rivers could have did a better job of really reaching out to the team, the leadership, and what we were doing was special. And we had success, and the connections that we had, like Terry said, weren't necessarily connected to the organization. And so we were constantly fighting that acceptance role of being accepted. We were separate by default. We were a separate, not because we wanted to be separate. We were separate by default. So we did some things that had never been done. I'd like to point out too as well, we need to fact check, because I seen something about Rochester that they started the first African-American team in the country. I don't believe that to be correct if they're saying they started in 2007, because we were winning awards in 2004 and 2005. We were already established and winning awards. So I'm not sure if that's a typo, but I want to make sure I get that in there, that somebody fact check that, because if they're saying that they started it first in 2007, that is incorrect. And also, Crystal Adams was the first African-American female to ever receive a rowing scholarship. Okay, so I'm glad we're having this conversation to really get the facts out. And also, as Richard, as you said, let's not sugarcoat, and I won't, what the issues and challenges were. Even down to the equipment. I see some questions coming in about that we share equipment. Well, that was a whole nother issue. Because, the equipment costs a lot of money. And that was rammed into our head that it costs a lot of money. It was rammed into my head. And so I felt responsible that my team make sure they knew how to handle the equipment, how to handle the boats, how to properly handle the boats. And believe me, that in itself was a challenge, because you're under the microscope on handling the boat. Any team is. But when you're an all-black team, you really are under the microscope of how you handle equipment and handle the boats. So, there was just so many intricacies and nuances like that that went on that you constantly had to be aware of. So, although our Three Rivers did an outstanding job in initiating the program, I think there could have been a better job of sustaining what was started.
And so, Rob, I did the fact checking because I worked with the Rochester program. And so they indeed were out there. They weren't racing or anything like that. They were building up to racing, but they definitely were out there. And and so, as I like to tell people, my diversity, equity, inclusion, we're not going to oppress another group and say, no, I was more oppressed. No, I was more oppressed. But both of you are very, you were within the same year of being out there, unbeknownst to each other. So two very strong programs, and they had zero support also in Rochester, and that's why they finally went defunct, because it just didn't have support. And so that question about, and I fought hard I had to learn, because I didn't go into the sport of rowing, and I had to fight hard to understand the hierarchy of who gets to row what boat. And to me, some of that became classes, and some of that became the original microaggressions on docks before microaggressions was a thing. And so when you're not culturally aware and you're not racially literate, you may not understand what messaging that you're actually putting out there. So thank you for that, Rob, for your honesty. So
And
let's go
Rich,
through.
and Rich, I just want to push back just a little bit. I would like to talk with you offline about those because the facts are the facts. I want to make sure that that is accurate because again, we've got our documentation, and if they're saying 2007, then that's not true because we were out there before them.
And so whatever numbers was given at US Rowing was given by me, so that I could have easily did something incorrectly, and that's fine. I can take responsibility for that. But we certainly will talk offline on that and make sure if you deserve to be the first in America as an adult team, you'll be the first.
Richard,
So,
can I piggyback a little bit off of what Rob and Paul were saying, as well as I just want to bring up this point. Rowing organizations have to fund these groups that these black groups that want to row and they're part of their teams or part of their organization. They have to be willing to fund them. All right, plain and simple. When you look at Pittsburgh and you look at the socioeconomic situation in Pittsburgh, African Americans are not sitting at the top of the cash pile. So if you really want to encourage Black participation and diversity, you have to encourage that. You have to put money behind it. As you know, our team is funded by an organization called Healthy Hearts and Souls. They had a grant, and that Healthy Hearts and Souls, that meaning of that was it was a spiritual organization, but also they wanted to try and create a healthy environment, in terms of exercise, diet, etc. Now, when their money ended, that was essentially when our program ended. So that's what I'm trying to say is that any of these, I want US Rowing to be able to see is that any of these boathouses across the country, I mean, you have to put the money behind this if you want to see diversity, because oftentimes these people of color are not the people who have the wealth. So I just wanted to make that point clear.
That goes back to that word intentionality.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
thank you for that, Kevin. And I want the panelists, because I'm one person, to just be aware of what's being put up in the chat room, if you can see the chat room. But we will get to we'll get to question and answers in a few moments. And so here's this question. Should rowing be in the business of racial and social justice, or just care about fast boats?
Ugh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear from some other people. Yes.
I believe it should be inclusive. I don't think it should just be about fast rowing. Because I think we were, and Rob, correct me if I'm wrong. I remember when we were our first head of the Ohio, we got a lot of pushback because we were in the novice race, and they kept trying to say we weren't entitled to be in the novice because they said we had experience. We didn't have experience, we had power. And we got a lot of pushback and a lot of arguments behind that. But ultimately, we were in the right class that we were supposed to be in. We just worked cohesively together good, and we had a lot of 3-day nights on that water and running around that island. So we put the time in, and we deserved to be in the group that we were qualified for. We just happened to have a lot more practice.
Yeah,
so
that's correct.
thank you for that, both Debbie and Rob. And so the next question I have for you, what was your biggest challenge at a regatta? Was it being skilled enough? And I know as a Black person myself, we always have to outwork the work and do double the work and make sure that we're representing, because people think we represent our entire race. So we will work hard. But what was your biggest challenge at regattas? Was it being skilled enough to race, or feeling accepted at the regattas? There's Debbie's face again.
I'm going back to being accepted because Rob stayed on us and we had ample practice, ample training, ample just, I mean, I think all of us even changed our eating habits while we were doing this because we really didn't have a choice. So I think our biggest thing was acceptance.
Oh, Terry or Paul, haven't heard from you in a while.
Paul, do you want to?
No, it is a loaded question.
Yeah.
First of all, let me just piggyback on something that Debbie said, because they're definitely, I mean, the work ethic and the commitment was extraordinary. Rob Chambers had a tight program. We constantly gave him props for the efficiency, the work ethic. I mean, he was so consistent. So when Debbie says that that we put the work in, that's no exaggeration. That's what drew me in for me personally. It was an incredible display of work ethic and cohesion, and I loved it. And that's what those are critical components of a rowing team. So but when there's an absence, see, I think it's important to understand that when you have an absence of diversity, that hurts everyone. It doesn't. Who are you benefiting? What are you accomplishing by creating a culture of exclusion or inaccessibility for a particular group of people? If anything, that waters down the sport because you're not pulling the best out of your community. So that's it's so you don't have to focus. There's a question in the chat about focusing on BIPOC. No, you don't have to focus on it. Swing the pendulum to the extreme on the other end. You just create an environment of inclusion and accessibility. Kevin was talking earlier about funding, right? If you know that rowing as a whole has been exclusionary and there's this perception out there, especially among athletes of color, that rowing isn't for me. It doesn't belong to me. Right. I was under that impression. I hate to say it, but it's true. I was under the impression. I found out about it because of a chance encounter running into a friend. I mean, I grew up in Pittsburgh. So it's not about throwing money at a group. It's about making sure that obstacles as basic as, I don't know, quality equipment or, memberships or rowing gear. I mean, you're going to let that be the obstacle when there's already, how serious are you, your intentionality, how serious are you if you're not even willing to assist with those basic things, and creating a culture? You have to create a culture of inclusion. That's what makes people feel welcome. That's what pulls out their best. That's what eliminates the microaggressions. Microaggressions are very traumatic. There's well-documented studies about that, and we experienced plenty of them during our experience. So I think that creating an overall culture and providing some assistance, like Kevin said, those things go a long way. And then what you end up with, is an all-around. Like I said, you're pulling the best out of the community, and then, so that's my 2 cents about it.
All right. So Terry, I'm going to move on to another question, and I want to take us now. We understand the sociological impact and sometimes lack of social awareness around the docks at that time. But I want to go now into just a question from your old coach, Donald Weberplank. He would like to hear more about building connections to the water. So talk about your experience and what your journey was like being on the water, Terry.
Wow. That is so special. That is, I spoke a little bit earlier about growing up in Pittsburgh and having these 3 rivers being such a part of, the landscape. You cross these rivers, you deal with these rivers all the time, but not having, coming from a family with a boat or having a water sport that I played, um, I had no real connection to the water. Always liked the water, had no problem with swimming and doing things like that, but I had no connection to the rivers. And rowing changed all of that. It just really did. The beauty of the sport, the there's a competition, there's the beauty of the water, there's that vessel is so, there's so little that separates you from the water, so you're almost at one with the water. And it's just, if you've done it, and everyone on this call, and the panelists and everyone that's in the chat has experienced it before, so you know what I'm talking about. But that connection, it just changed the rivers for me forever, even to this day. And I remember when I was actively rowing, as I would drive and travel, and I would go across a bridge, especially early in the morning, or when it was peaceful and quiet out. There's just something about that connection that is so special and so spiritual and so beautiful. And yet you're out there just kicking butt and trying to row and trying to win a race too. I mean, it's all of that. So yeah, that's what I would say about the connectedness to the water.
Yeah, thanks for that, Terry. Hey, Rob, I'm going to ask you the same question, because you were the first of the first in a sense, and you became a coach, and you didn't row before that, and you couldn't swim. And this idea that we have this back channel that you could practice in, and especially if you're doing a single, but then when you come out of that cut and you see the architecture of the city of Pittsburgh, as you see behind me right now, that exact same picture. What's that feel like, Rob?
That's a great question, Rich. I'm glad you put it that way. Yeah, that channel is like your training wheels, and then when you leave out that channel, man, it's like the training wheels are off. And in the beginning, because I didn't know how to swim, and I wasn't connected to the water like I needed to be, it took a while for me to get that connection. But once I got comfortable with the water, swimming and being in the water, and just, I remember Mike Lambert, like I compared the training wheels. He'd hold me in that channel. They'd hold the stern of the boat while I'm just trying to get in and out the scull, learn how to get in and out the boat. I mean, it was processes, Rich, just the steps. And then, I'll jump around a little bit, because that last question, what you said about the regattas too, a little bit, it was the acceptance, but it was also us wanting the pride of, like you said, of us. Okay, we know we got to be good, but we wanted to be good for us too. We wanted to be accepted, but we wanted to be good too. But that connection with the water is, there's nothing like when everybody hits that catch at the same time, and you hear that woof, 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 and that boat gets up to speed, and you get to cutting that water, and then you racing, man. And then I'll never forget, because I played other sports. I played football, I've done other sports, basketball and all that. But man, you don't get many timeouts in rowing. I mean, when you're on that water, there's no timeout. I mean, everybody's, kind of counting on you to get we got a race to finish, and then guess what? You got to row back. So that was something that was interesting too. But that connection is Dawn said and Terry said, it's a certain spiritualness too. I felt like to connect with your team when everybody's on sync. It's just a great feeling, and you moving that boat, man. It's a really nice feeling. It really is.
Thanks for that, Rob. I felt that. I felt everything that you just said. Me practicing in the back channel, any chance that I got, and then you get into that open water, and you just go, oh, every single time. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. And so I want to get a couple more questions from the audience into the chat or into the Q&A, and then I'm going to ask the panelists to share a couple things with the audience about what's the best thing that they can do to recruit a more inclusive boathouse. But right now, a couple more questions in the Q&A room. There's a Q&A and then there's chat. There's another question in the Q&A. What impact has rowing team had on each of your lives today? So this time I want to take it over to Paul, and then I'm going to take it over to Kevin.
Yeah, thank you for that, Richard. You know, for me personally, it was just a very rewarding experience. You know, I was telling a friend of mine the other day, you know, it's like when you're growing up, and regardless of what phase you are in your life, when you're a part of something meaningful, I don't care if it's you're at work or it's a recreational sport, that is a very rewarding and invigorating experience. You know, I like Rob, I also you know, have a history of being an athlete, and I among other things, I ran track and field, you know, for years, and then you know played you know, basketball for Pitt intramural for a while, and then you know, so I was looking for something to do anyway, you know, so it was a very welcome experience. We had so much fun. I was talking with Ray Zellers the other day, one of our you know, teammates, and we were just
Wait,
reminiscing.
Ray Zellers, not just Ray Zellers, but the idea that a professional NFL football player said, yes, I'm going to try rowing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Ray used to play. Ray used to play for the NFL, and we were, and you know, we were reminiscing just last week about how much fun we all had as a team. We had so much fun that we were getting together after rowing. Like, even though we were tired and we were at practice, and Rob Chambers, you know, ran us through the ringer, and so did Donald Weber playing, you know, we were still hanging out afterwards and having cookouts and going over each other's houses. We ended up planning road trips. We were getting together. We were engaged in so much exercise that we were going on bike. We got into bicycling, started you know, bicycling around the city on the trails, and you know, because a lot of us, it was our first experience, you know, and we didn't know, you know, Washington's Landing and Melville and things like that. So it was just absolutely incredible. So there's a lot of ways that I could cite as to what impact you know, the experience had on me, but learning a new sport and making some, you know, wonderful lifelong friendships, those have to be within my top three.
Wonderful. So Kevin, the same question, what impact has the rowing team had on each of your lives today? And then Terry, I have a question for you after that.
Okay. What I can tell you is I remember seeing a shirt, and the shirt said that when my child joined a crew team, I did not know that they were joining a cult. And that's essentially what rowing was like. It was like really almost a cult, in the sense that we did spend so much time together, and we got to know each other so well, because Rob Chambers always said there's no superstar in rowing. So you don't have that one player that can just kind of save the day. Everyone has to come together. And as anyone that's on this Zoom meeting knows, I'm sure that they row. You have to be together. You have to be synchronous, and the only way you're going to do that is to be close. And so I think as a team, we became very close. Part of the things that made us extremely close also was some of the opposition that we dealt with. We knew no one really wanted to lose to us. Even if we didn't gold medal or silver medal, I'm being very honest, it was clear that no one wanted to come behind to catch crew. So it was that type of some of the adversity that we dealt with, the beauty of the sport, being out on the water, and just us being together, that had an impact on me, to where I recognize that we can do really anything we set our minds to. One of the things we have to realize, and again, I'm going to quote Robert Chambers on it, rowing is a dangerous sport. You're out there in fast water at times, deep water, and we do have to pay attention. You have to work together, and you have to think about safety, etc. So I just believe for us to be able to accomplish that and to pull it off, to do it safely, for us to never have any really serious mishaps, it makes you know that you really can accomplish anything if you put your mind to it.
That's right, Kevin. Safety first. And Terry, I said I had a question for you, but I actually meant for Debbie first. Is that okay, Terry?
Yes, that's fine.
And so, and by the way, all of you know my fitness background, and when I would see you doing your physical conditioning before you got in the boats, I was so proud. I paid attention from a little office. And so the question from Carrie, who I think I taught indoor rowing at the beginning when we created the indoor rowing to then feed people into beginner rowing, and Carrie is still there. She said, will any of you consider coming back to TRA and rowing, coxing, or coaching capacity? So I want to start with you, Terry, because I know you have some ideas about possibly, development, fundraising, that type of thing.
Debbie.
Debbie, I keep saying Terry, sorry.
All right.
Okay. So I would definitely be interested in all that. And most of the people that are here on the panel, they know that one of the reasons why I left was because my mom got sick, and I was also in need of a hip replacement from driving a bus all those years and all the other sports that I had played throughout my childhood and adulthood. So I got out because I had other responsibilities to watch my mom. To this year, she's 10 years in her dementia journey. I still take care of her. I'm her sole caregiver. But given the opportunity, I would love to come back. I would love to meet all the other African American rowers that are across the nation. Y'all just give me a reason to travel, and I'm there. But I would love to have some part, given my schedule. I would love to participate. I swear that was the best shape I'd ever been in my life. Even though I needed a hip, it didn't stop me from rowing, getting it done.
Time to get it back, Debbie. Cool. We're gonna be calling you. Trust me, Terry. You have a short moment. Is there any capacity that you would like to come back to TRA or support the DE&I work of U.S. Rowing?
I would welcome the opportunity to be involved again with the sport, with the organization. I'm getting a little feedback, sorry about that. But yes, I would be all in, as long as Rob didn't make me run 2 miles before every practice. See, we didn't really get into what that really looked like. Rob was out there trying to kill us, but to Debbie's point, it was the best shape that I've ever been in my life as well. So, but no, it's a great sport. I never lost the love for it, the excitement about it. It would be different because it's not the same as what we had. What we had was a moment in time, and it was so special. It was so important, and it will live on. But I would welcome the opportunity to come back and be involved again in some capacity.
Uh-oh.
I think we might have lost Richard.
I think Richard froze.
Overwhelmed him.
U.S. Row, we got to let Richard back in.
I just want to give a shout out real quickly. It looks like we have a couple of team members. I see Kim Randolph. I see Joe McCain in the chat. I see Donald Weber Plank. So anyway, yes.
Yeah. I also
Great
wanted
shout out, Terry.
Yeah.
Yes.
To the people that are listening and watching and listening to this webinar, much gratitude, deep appreciation, just for allowing us to spend some of your evening with us and letting us tell. This is the beginning stages of us telling our story. Just want to say thank you to, I know it's not quite over yet, but I just want to make sure that we say thank you to United States Rowing Association. It's truly a pleasure to be here, and I mean that on every level.
Hey, Paul, can I say something quick?
Absolutely.
Bottom line, when all this is said and done, Three Rivers Rowing, Healthy Hearts and Souls, the Catch Crew, we do exist.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There was and I think well, okay, Richard's coming back.
I'm back. I'm
You was-
back. I'm sorry.
okay.
My computer shut right down, like in the middle of Terry's wonderful and eloquent finishing touch. So, Paul, should I cut you off so we can finish this up, or is it something that we
No,
should hit?
no, go ahead, Richard. We were just filling in time, waiting for you to come back.
Can I say
Beautiful.
one thing real quickly? I also want to acknowledge there's been so many encouraging and comments in the chat, and I just appreciate that. That gives me hope for the future.
And I was going to mention that as a closure. I'm a little dark because I have to move spaces, but as a closure, right now in the chat, TRRA is actually inviting you back. And Rob, I've told this story all the time. When I was a young man, no one came to my Black neighborhood of Homewood and invited me to row. They invited me to play hoops. They invited me to play football. They invited me to run track. They did not invite me to row. Rob went into the neighborhood and invited each of you to row on the street, wherever you are. And right now, TRA is showing love and saying, hey, we want to invite you back. And so what I wanted to do is a rapid fire. We're over our time, but a quick rapid fire, and just less than a second across the room. Paul, what do you want the audience to go away with?
Very quickly, I just want to remind everybody that we are, we're in Pittsburgh, and we have this beautiful city with all of these great rivers. It would be inconceivable to me that we can't create an inclusive environment and get our DEI correct. That just wouldn't even make sense to me. There's no obstacles to doing it. It can be done. And there's an old saying that rising tide lifts all boats. There's a very awkward, there's a lot of uncomfortable aspects about a lack of diversity in Pittsburgh and the country, in general. So I think we just need to turn the page on it and move forward as one. I would personally like to see us become a national affiliate of U.S. Rowing, raise awareness about the catch crew, advance its legacy, and just alter the perception of the sport that it's not inclusive or inaccessible, because that's not true.
Thank you for your not so rapid fire. You point that across. Okay.
You're welcome, Richard.
Debbie.
Well, I think I said it while you were offline, but I said, basically all this started because nobody thought we existed. I just want to say,
Yeah.
under Healthy Hearts and Souls from the Three Rivers Rowings, we do exist, and we're not going anywhere, and we're going to try to do what we can do to make sure this carries on to the next generations.
Thank you, Debbie. Terry, rapid fire. You're on mute. We like your voice, Terry.
Oh,
It's
thank
soothing.
you. I just want to say, I hope you remember our story. I would imagine that in the years since we left the sport, it hasn't become very diverse. Since we left, there may be one or two people who are rowing with you that maybe don't look like the majority of people there, and just think about that. Think about their experience, what that might be like, and just be welcoming and inclusive, and as I believe all of you will be from the chats that are going in the chat function.
Thanks, Terry. I appreciate that. And by the way, Linda Lang, who is still at Three Rivers Rowing, gives a shout out to Rob. She thinks she was in year 4. She thinks she coxed it. And she's been a big fan. So there you go. So Kevin, captain, my captain.
What I would say is just tap the community at large. Being a part of Three Rivers Rowing changed everyone on the team's lives. It did. It had a major impact that we will never forget. And it changed us in so many ways, but they're all positive ways. So isn't that what a boathouse wants to do? Isn't that what they want to do, is try to connect community and try to grow their boathouse? So that's what I say, is tap the community at large. And it's nice seeing people that may not look like you sharing a boat with you. You'll learn something. And I think it'll make everyone better for it.
Thank you, Kevin. It's called a boathouse, not my house.
Correct.
Right? Has to be everybody's house. Rob, you're
Correct.
going to bring it home because you started all this madness, and then we're going to sign off.
Man, thanks, Rich. I just want to commend you for putting this together and for keeping it going. You know, man, it takes all of us to kind of do this. I started it, and you kind of taken the torch and took it to another level. So I want to give you your props. Linda Lang, what's up? Much kudos. Carol Wharton, Coach Katie Samuels. I mean, there's so many people that were. I mean, nobody does anything about herself. No one gets there by herself and runs the ultimate team sport. And I think Terry said it too. When you care about the people, we had a connection. We didn't want to let each other down. We became friends on and off the water. You know, Donald Weber Plank, I mean, he was my guy. He was the guy that pushed me. He made me believe I could do it. Mike Lambert was there from a, you know, I guess a sociology point, but Coach Donald was there from an athletic point. And other athletes and coaches, they don't care what color you are. If you're willing to work hard and willing to learn, they like athletes. And I think that's what Donald made me feel comfortable with. And Rich, I know you can subscribe to that, being a competitor that you are. But I want to thank everyone for the kudos. I really, I'm humbled by the nice shout outs. I really appreciate everyone. Obviously I couldn't have did it without you guys buying.
All right. Thank you, Rob. And thank you, Catch Crew, and all those from the Catch Crew and TRA who were on the call, and all those across the nation. I want to thank you all for listening in. The number one thing that I want you to do is not take this information and keep it to yourself, but when the recording comes out later tonight or next or in a couple of days, send that link to someone who should know. Invite someone to row. Go into their neighborhood and be intentional and say, you should see this. And I want you to be able to enjoy what they enjoyed on the water. U.S. Rowing, thank you for always putting up with my nonsense and my ideas and supporting me. And we're out, people. Thanks a lot.